Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Attorney Mick Graywall, and I appreciate all of you coming here today for this press conference. Seated to my right is Matt Schembechler. Seated to his right is my co-counsel, Steve Drew. Seated to his right is fellow survivor Daniel Kwiatkowski. Seated to Daniel's right is Attorney Jonathan Marco. Seated to my left is survivor Gilvanni Johnson, and seated next to him is his counsel, Dennis Mulvihill. We are here today to shed some light on what has occurred at the University of Michigan all the way back in 1969 through present. These three courageous survivors are going to tell their stories in a statement. I ask that you listen carefully and honor them. Their courage to come forward and stand today is not only going to help them heal, but is also going to help all the other hundreds, if not thousands, of survivors of this ordeal. We have to shed some light on this situation so the truth can come out. To begin, I'm going to let Matt Schembechler read a statement.
My name is Matt Schembechler. My father was Bo Schembechler. Prior to this week, the story I'm sharing with you today has only been shared with my attorneys and 4 other people. My mother, Millie, my deceased brother, Chip, Don Canham, and my father, Bo. It's a deeply personal and painful story of abuse and betrayal, abuse by a trusted doctor and betrayal of my father and the University of Michigan, which he served. My father sent me to Dr. Robert Anderson for my first physical exam around 1969. I was in the 4th grade, and I had to get a physical before starting tackle football with the junior Wolverines. Dr. Anderson was the team doctor, so that's where Bo sent me for my exam. As a 10-year-old kid, I didn't really know what to expect, but what Dr. Anderson did made me uncomfortable. He fondled my genitals and conducted an invasive rectal exam with his finger. I told my mom as soon as I got home, as I was uncomfortable and shaken. She was a registered nurse, and after she had heard what Anderson did, she knew something was wrong, and she wanted me to tell my dad in her presence. When Bo got home, I told him what happened. That did not go well. Bo's temper was legendary, and he lost it. He screamed, "I don't want to hear this. I'm not hearing this." I tried to tell him repeatedly, but my effort earned me a punch in the chest. This was the beginning and the end of the relationship with him. I hoped my father would protect me, but he didn't. My mom didn't give up. She went over Bo's head and asked athletic director Don Canham to come to the house in the following days to hear what occurred. I respected Don Canham and told him what happened to me at the hands of Dr. Anderson. Mr. Canham told my mother, "Okay, I'll handle this, Millie." It was my understanding that Mr. Canham terminated Dr. Anderson, but shortly thereafter, Bo had him reinstated because he needed his team doctor and wanted to ensure Anderson remained part of the Michigan team. In the 10th grade, I needed another football physical, and that meant another trip to Dr. Anderson. This time I was a little older, but still was told to respect doctors. Anderson groped me once again before I stopped him, as it made me feel uncomfortable. The final time I saw Anderson was as a college freshman for another physical exam, as I was just about to start football at Western Michigan. This time, Anderson didn't lay a hand on me. He just signed a paper clearing me to play. Many of the University of Michigan players weren't as fortunate. I trained with them during the summers in the mid-'70s and heard their stories and locker room jokes about Anderson's abuse. We now know, because of survivors coming forward, that Anderson's abuse of players, students for over 30 years was the worst kept secret at the university. I understand the reverence people have for my father, including Jim Harbaugh, But I know the truth. Anderson abused me and countless others over 3 decades. It's clear the culture of abuse at the University of Michigan has not changed and will not change until they acknowledge what happened. Anderson was able to continue this abuse for so long because he was supported by a culture that placed the reputation of the university above the health and safety of the students. That is the culture that made my father a legend and placed his statue in front of Schembechler Hall. It's a culture that he believes, as he did, no man is more important than the team. Dr. Anderson was part of the University of Michigan team. He was part of Bo's team. Therefore, he was more important than any man. It's very clear that Bo and the university always put themselves before any student, athlete, or son just to support the brand. I'm coming forward for my own healing and to help prevent people and institutions from exploiting the trust, power, and authority given to them. I sincerely hope that in some way we'll be protecting others where Bo and the university failed to protect me.
That's the brief story of Matt Schembechler. Please take a look at my left. That was a picture of Matt. I think he was approximately 11 or 12 years old. This happened to a 10-year-old boy. We're talking about a pedophile predator that was protected by Bo Schembechler. Daniel?
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Kwiatkowski. I attended the University of Michigan from 1977 to 1981. During my senior year in high school, I went to St. Clement. Bo actively recruited me to join the University of Michigan football team. He came to my home and met with me and my family. I will never forget that meeting with Bo and my family. During the meeting, Bo made promises to my parents. Bo promised them that if I attended the University of Michigan and played football, that Bo would be a father to me and look after me like I was family. We were a poor working class family, and my parents were very worried about my future and being able to pay for medical bills. Bo promised my family that he would keep me safe and make sure I got the best medical treatment. We were sold. When Bo left my house, my family and I knew there was no question that I was going to become a Michigan man. I was 17 years old and full of piss and vigor and wanting to become a Michigan man and a Michigan football player. But Bo didn't keep me safe. He broke his promise to me and my family in the fall of 1977. My freshman year, I attended my first mandatory physical with Dr. Anderson. During that physical, Dr. Anderson molested and violated me. He inappropriately caressed my testicles while asking me detailed questions about my sex life. After I tried to answer his questions, he bent over and put his head near my penis and began blowing on it, telling me it's okay to get an erection. He then digitally raped my rectum multiple times. I couldn't believe that Bo and the university would break its promise to protect and take care of me like family. I kept telling myself there's no way that Bo would let something bad happen to us. After practice one day, I approached Bo and reported to him that Dr. Anderson had digitally raped my rectum. Bo looked at me and said, "Toughen up." Bo knew, I knew. Then I was on my own, and Bo was never going to protect us from Dr. Anderson. After I reported to Bo what Dr. Anderson had done, Bo forced me to attend 3 more physicals with Dr. Anderson in 78, 79, and 81. Dr. Anderson violated me again and again. I graduated and moved on from U of M, but the scars of what happened to me by Dr. Anderson and Bo never went away. I have avoided doctors ever since that time, jeopardizing my own health, and have found it very hard to have intimate relationships with women. In 1999, I attended a U of M reunion. Bo and Dr. Anderson showed up at the reunion. It was supposed to be a celebration of U of M and its players and all that we accomplished. But when I saw Dr. Anderson, I immediately became sick, just like I had 20 years earlier as a teenager. Here I am, an adult, feeling anxious and sick to my stomach, just like when I used to go into those exam rooms with Dr. Anderson. When it finally came time to say hello to Bo at the reunion, I felt oddly nervous. That's when Bo told me, "Don't be afraid of me. I can't hurt you anymore." Well, Bo's statement couldn't be farther from the truth. Even all these years later, I struggle with pain caused by Dr. Anderson and Bo. Bo knew, everybody knew. It's hard to share this story, but I hope that in doing so, I can bring some peace and justice to some of the other survivors. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Gilvanni?
Good afternoon. Before I get started, I want to talk about how I knew Bo. Everybody know Bo know. Bo knows everything that goes on campus, everything. My freshman year, I wouldn't play basketball. Somehow it got back to him that he knew I was playing basketball. One time I went to see my brother play his game. It got back to him that I was smoking marijuana. I had another player smoking marijuana. If anybody knew anything about me, they knew I didn't do drugs, I didn't drink. My name is Gilvanni Johnson. I played football at the University of Michigan from 1982 to 86. I was recruited to play football and basketball. When I was recruited by the football coaches, they told my mother that they would take care of me and she would have nothing to worry about while I was at Michigan. The coaches told both of us that I would have the best medical care in the world. Coach Bill McCartney was the coach assigned to recruit me. And when my mother saw the sign in his office that said, "God bless you," she said that Michigan was where I was going to school. Before my preseason physical, my freshman year, you would hear upperclassmen joking about seeing Dr. Anal. I really didn't know what that Dr. Anal meant. I was told to see Dr. Anderson for my physical. When I had my exam, Dr. Anderson commented on my genitals, played with my genitals, tries to arouse me, and he put his finger in my anus. The exam was very painful. I felt humiliated and confused. I never had a medical exam like that before. I had to go back to Dr. Anderson again for either a cold or an injury. Same thing took place. I had a rectal exam, and he played with my penis. After that occasion, I told Bo that Dr. Anderson played with my genitals and put his finger in my anus. Bo said that he would check on that with the medical staff. I never heard back from Bo, and he never discussed it with me again. Other players told me not to bring it up with Bo again for fear that Bo might pull my scholarship. I was told not to rock the boat. My complaints about Dr. Anderson to Bo changed our relationship. It became contentious instantly. I was in Bo's doghouse for the fact that he told me during my recruiting that I would be allowed to play both sports, football and basketball. He told me when I asked him, could I go play basketball, that I couldn't play, as he had promised me when I was being recruited. Players and coaches, you should talk about Dr. Anderson's exam regularly. Coaches, you should joke about him and actually threaten Dr. Anderson's exam if you did not think we were working hard enough. Only now do I realize how crazy it was to threaten rape as a way of motivating players to work harder. I had to see Dr. Anderson about 15 to 20 times in my years at Michigan for various reasons, colds, physicals, injuries, and etc. If Bo had stopped Dr. Anderson after the first exam my freshman year, the rest of the assaults would never have happened. If he had stopped Dr. Anderson before 1982, I would not have been victimized at all. Because of my experience at Michigan, I did not trust doctors. I did not trust doctors and have delayed important medical care. Had trust issues, relationship issues, and intimacy issues, and have always been too promiscuous in an effort to prove to myself and to others that I was a man. Because Michigan did not take care of me like they promised my mother, I was molested over and over again by Dr. Anderson. I lost 2 marriages because of the decision that Bo made to keep Dr. Anderson on staff, knowing that he was molesting us. I am grateful for the chance to tell my story and hope that other people who may be in similar positions know that it's okay to protect yourself from a perverted doctor and the coaches who covered up for him. The reason why I've come forward is that I used to deal with kids, and I was a social worker, and we dealt with kids that was molested. And some of the most heinous things that I've seen reading kids' files was just outrageous. I don't want any other kids to have to go through what those kids went through, myself, my former teammates and Michigan teammates, kids in the future. They shouldn't have to go through this. And hopefully we'll bring light to this situation where it never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilvanni. You've now heard 3 statements from 3 survivors. Very compelling. I don't think it needs to be ever said again that Bo did not know. Bo knew. If Bo listened to his son, these 2 gentlemen would not be sitting up here today. If Bo listened to either one of them, hundreds of victims could have been saved. This needs to change. Our culture needs to change. Steve, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Drew, and I actually was at the University of Michigan before Bo and before Don Canham. I started in 1967 and graduated from their law school in 1974. So I was on campus during this time. I celebrated the 24-12 victory that Bo had over Woody, and believe me, as a student, we celebrated. But the time is always right to do what is right. None other than Dr. Martin Luther King said that statement. The time was right in 1969, in the 1970s, and the 1980s for Bo Schembechler, Don Canham, and others in management at the University of Michigan to stop Dr. Anderson from sexually abusing students and other persons that came on their campus. It is more than a coincidence that in several universities, physicians and other persons in authority in athletic departments have become predators, and that they've been allowed and enabled to sexually abuse these children, these young students, and visitors to their campus. Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, Southern California, charges against UCLA, and now Michigan. How many more do we need? We need to have and start having total accountability. We need to stop the argument that we are immune from responsibility. We need to now do what is right, as Martin Luther King said, so that people that are entrusted to these universities, their students, and people that are invited on their campus are protected and are more important than the power the privilege, the profits of the program, more important than the team, more important even than the brand. The brand needs to be accountability. And I'm hopeful that these strong survivors have made some inroads to that finally happening, and I thank them. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Dennis?
I think the survivors speak for themselves. Thank you.
So I'm going to open it up for some brief questioning, maybe about 10 to 15 minutes. But as Steve Drew, my co-counsel, one of the lead counsel in this case, indicated, we need to change. These gentlemen have bared their soul and told their stories now. What happened to them? Betrayal, assault. As a culture, we need to change. These universities need to change. I mean, I'm also a University of Michigan grad from 86 to 90. I was there when Jim was there in the tail end. I couldn't believe that this happened at the University of Michigan, right after we just finished the Michigan State case 60 miles away. Can we start to change now? These courageous men have spoken. So I'll open it up for some brief questions. Now I'm gonna point.
Matt, why now, and essentially to what end? What do you want to see happen as a result of your coming forward? And is there a lawsuit involved in some way?
I'm sorry, could you speak
Yeah.
up just a little bit? I've got a
I apologize.
hearing problem.
Maybe you could stand, it might be easier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brian Maloney, Channel 4 News, Detroit. Just curious, why now come forward? And to what end? Is there a lawsuit? What is it you want to see the university do as a result of this?
Well, that's, how many questions is that?
Why now? Start with
Yeah. Why now? The opportunity was there, and I think socially, we're ready to accept this and handle it responsibly. I don't think we were ready as a culture, even back in the 70s, to handle this. And what I want out of it is that nobody even considers doing this to another kid in college, you know, trusting athletes.
Thank you, Matt. Charlie?
Charlie Langton, Fox 2, yes. Matt, what do you think your father would say if he heard this news conference, and specifically what you said about him?
I can't repeat that in public. Honestly, I could care less what his opinion was.
That much animosity?
That much experience. I don't hate Bo. You know, as people try to pay me that, I just don't like him.
In the blue.
John Hewitt, WWJ, for either of the players in particular, how well known, Coach Harbaugh has said it's not the Bo he knew, has not really offered details of his knowledge of any of this. Was it read its common knowledge? How well known was it within the football program? Do you believe he could not have known?
Like I said before, he knows everything. When I say everything, everything. When you go to class, when you don't go to class. And he knew stuff from me back in Detroit. He had people everywhere, so there's no way you could not have known.
What I'm asking about is Coach Harbaugh today and in that era.
Well,
I mean, how common knowledge was it among the team?
Coach Harbaugh's experience is his experience. Can't speak for us what we went through. I don't know what he went through, but pretty much everybody knew because it was joked about from around players. So there's no way he could not have known.
If you would have walked through our locker room at that time, it was a constant joke. If you had come back from the doctor, you got teased because you got Dr. Andersized. So if you were an assistant coach, now Bo didn't hang out with the main players in the locker room and in the training room and in the weight room. But you got to remember, Bo hated injuries. Bo didn't want you in the training room. He didn't want you around doctors. You were almost kind of ostracized on his good list if you did have tape on or if you did have an injury. He was very much against that. He was for playing with pain. But to your question, it was common knowledge. To give you an example, I can give you from my own personal experience. I had asked a player that was sick because I was very sick with a flu-type chest cold, and I needed some type of medicine because I was coughing up blood. And I asked the player, because he had just went the week before to get some, and he told me, yeah, he got the finger in the butt and the abuse. I laid there for 6 weeks sick because I didn't want to go get the abuse. So everybody knew, and you had to deal with it your own way as a 17-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid. You had to make these decisions now. So you understand, see, when he told my parents that he was going to take care of my medical, I couldn't go back home now and say, Daddy, help me. Back then, you were out of the house. Bo was now my daddy. So when my daddy said, toughen up, I had to deal with everything. Would make my own decisions. What was right or wrong for me. Now, you may ask yourselves, why did we let this go on? And why? Well, there was a lot of props, too. You know, I wanted to go to California and play in a Rose Bowl. I wanted to be part of a team with a bunch of great guys that liked each other. I mean, the players you hung with weren't doing nothing wrong to you. So, you know, there was a lot of things we had to juggle back then.
In the blue in the front row. Yep, right there.
Excuse me, Bob Winowski, Detroit News. For any or all of the survivors, I hear the word accountability. I understand from a social picture, larger accountability, but specifically from Michigan, what is it that they need to do to make it whole or closure? Is it as simple as the statue, the naming of the building? What is it that specifically from Michigan or from Michigan you need to hear or see?
Me personally, is I would just, that they wouldn't allow a predator to persist for all them years. And it wasn't just Bo Schembechler that allowed that predator to persist. It was the whole university. I mean, he was fired, rehired, hid. I mean, there's a lot of facts that you guys should be looking up that went on during that time. It was all about saving money as far as I was concerned. They were starting out to build that brand, build that program. And they built it on our backs. And that's basically what it came down to. You know, Anderson was involved too, I think, a lot to save money in the program. He started the blood testing in my era. We never were blood tested. Then all of a sudden we started getting blood tested. So I don't know all the back scenes. I was just an idiot 18-year-old kid. I can just tell you what I think or thought back then. And the decisions I had to go through my head at a young age.
For me, the accountability is part of it, but if anybody knows, U of M, they still denying it. They still denying it. I mean, they trying to make us survivors look like, we didn't experience this. So for me, is they need to own up to what went down. And from this point forward, make sure none of these kids coming in for camps, kids coming in to play for Michigan, make sure none of these kids are assaulted again. And also, for me, is to put it out there for all these kids, adults, or whoever around this country to be able to come forward. This is not easy, because after yesterday's interview, I got all kind of negative stuff going on. But they don't know what I went through. They don't know what I'm going through now.
So can I ask, who's denying it? Because the president has apologized, there's litigation or?
Well, we're not talking about litigation. We're talking about just the fact that I got a situation where the university, yes, the president, but there's no apologies for us, per se. You know, they do a blanket apology, but the apology to us, the victims, is what I'm talking about.
Dennis.
Yeah, and I think there's an important distinction to be made here. Almost all of the apologies that come from the university are on behalf of a dead doctor. It's not on behalf of the university itself. They apologize for what Dr. Anderson did. I have yet to see, and maybe they did, but I have yet to see the university take ownership of their own responsibility in allowing Dr. Anderson to do what he did. The university, I don't believe, has come out and said, we own this, we knew, we're sorry, we're going to do the right thing and make sure this never happens again. It's always an apology for someone that they have no station to apologize for. They have no standing to apologize for a doctor. They can only apologize for their own behavior, and they're not doing that.
And I agree with what Dennis said. If you look, the apology that you were all referring to is they're apologizing that this happened to them. They're not apologizing that they allowed this to happen to them. You hear today that Bo Schembechler knew in '69. These two guys shouldn't be here. Where's the apology for letting Bo keep him on staff? Where's the apology when East Hope terminated him and still kept him on? They're not owning up. Next question, right here in the front.
For Matt, and if either of the players have a thought on this as well, what's your understanding of what Bo saw in Dr. Anderson that made him feel so strongly about keeping Dr. Anderson on the staff to the point of intervening to prevent him from being fired?
Well, I had to think about that, and I do think that's a great question, but there's not a soul in this room that knows Bo longer or better than me on a very personal level. And the only thing I can come up with, knowing Bo and how he operated, was he's got the goods on Dr. Anderson. Dr. Anderson's going to do what he tells him to do. Right? Says a kid can't play. No, Dr. Anderson, that kid's playing. That's what I think. Control. And his personality. That helped him have control. Now, he knew he had control over Dr. Anderson because he's on the gallows if this gets out. He knew that. And he was, he was like a very tough business guy. He knew how to play his cards.
Dan, did you want to say something?
No, I'm fine.
We'll jump over here.
Yeah, Michael Rosberg, Sports Illustrated. Matt said I think he was 10 when this assault occurred. Has anyone else in that age range come forward and said they were assaulted at that age?
There are public reports publicly available that Dr. Anderson was doing physicals for the Ann Arbor Public Schools while he was at the University of Michigan.
Has anyone said they were assaulted?
You'll have to ask those people.
Dan?
For any three of you, how should we remember Bo Schembechler?
For me, don't get me wrong, Bo was a good coach, legendary coach. But for me, my remembrance of him at this point is you allowed kids, 17 or 18-year-olds, to continuously be assaulted when you could have did something about it. Being a great coach doesn't give you a pathway to let other things happen to kids.
Any other questions?
Matt, all three of you are telling so much stories, but obviously you're the only one who's the son of the coach involved. You were quoted as saying yesterday about Bo, he's a horrible person. A, is that an accurate quote? Do you believe that? And then, how much for you is this about what took place that you have in common with the other players, and how much is also, if there is, a personal thing between you and with your dad, if you believe he's a horrible person?
Hi, Mitch.
Hi.
There was a lot of pain caused over a long period of time, and as a student, as you always are. It's a great question. There's a number of reasons why I'm here, but this was just one of them. That You know my mom. You knew her. Her reaction was part, if I'm going to tear up, it's what she looked like when I told her. And because I didn't know. I'm 10 years old, right? And for this to happen, if I don't do my part to help prevent it from happening, I'm responsible, right? If you know you can make a change and do good and you don't, you're responsible. That's the way I view it. That's the way I was brought up. Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I disagreed with Bo on a number of things, and I do to this day. There's still things going on that are horrifying in my family. Yeah, he's part of it. Dr. Anderson, I trusted him. You know this, you were around early enough. You know, we were a family, the coaches and the staff and all the kids. I mean, to pick up football games with just the kids, you know, two sides, right, with just the kids. It was a dream time, and the Dr. Anderson caused a lot of problems for my family. It never healed.
Are you saying that when that incident took place when you were 10, I think you made some reference to this before, that was kind of a breaking point between you and Bo from that point forward?
Without a doubt.
Meaning your whole adolescence basically was shadowed by that event, and the way you got along with him was all shadowed by that?
The entire time I lived in that house, I was all ready to go on the day I turned 18, I moved out.
In the back.
Matt, was your decision to speak today due in any part to recent comments by Coach Arnold?
I'm not understanding your reference.
Meaning, Mr. Grewal yesterday kind of thought maybe that was the final straw in bringing you forward, that his comments the other day might have been the wrong message in your estimation. Did it contribute to you coming forward and talking to us today?
Jim's?
Yes.
No, and thank you for this little runway for that. I love the Harbaugh family. They are as fine a family as you could ever meet. All of them. Jim, John, Joni, right? Jack, and Mrs. Harbaugh. I won't call her by her first name out of respect. Jim has nothing to do with this, right? He's coach at Michigan now, right? With a huge distance between he and Bo and the way it was. Sure, it helped form him, but I beg you, don't draw Jim Harbaugh into this. He deserves no negative feedback from this, none. Jim didn't know. In fact, Jim as a kid, right, I would have to say, in a respectful way, as a kid, he was a bit naive. This kind of topic doesn't register with him, or didn't. So please, don't take shots at Jim. He doesn't deserve it.
Kim?
Hello, my name is Kim Kozlowski. I'm a reporter at the Detroit News. I have a question for Mr. Kwiatkowski and Mr. Johnson. How do you feel that the University of Michigan's public report on Anderson by the WilmerHale law firm portrayed your stories in the report? And as a follow-up to that, what made you decide to come forward and reveal your identity?
What made me come forward to reveal my identity was the fact that people need to see a face with what's going on. Yes, everybody knows that there's things going on, investigations going on, but I felt that I needed to come out and let people know the fact that people are saying that Bo didn't know. He did know. And the only way that was going to get out is for me, myself, to come out to let people know he did know. I told him myself. And our relationship from that point went downhill. He wouldn't let me play basketball. As a matter of fact, it was my freshman year. When I went to college, I had a little girl. There was a tornado warning going on. Instead of going to study table, we was informed to go down in the basement, sit against the wall. I did that instead of going to study table. Well, the next morning, I had to get up and run at 6 o'clock in the morning because I made a choice that was outside of football. those were the type of things that I disliked about Coach Schembechler. Family come first for me. My daughter was first for me. So I felt that I needed to come in and express myself on how I felt about, the situation in terms of him not knowing. Again, I specify he knows about everything. He knew about everything.
Dan?
What was the question again? So I can.
The first question I asked is, what were your thoughts on how your story was portrayed in the WilmerHale report on Dr. Robert Anderson?
Okay, the WilmerHale report, I wasn't involved heavily into that. I was interviewed by a police officer, Officer West. So I don't know, I never read the Wilmer report. I don't follow this stuff on a daily basis. This isn't very important to me. The reason that this was brought to my attention was because somebody from the University of Michigan was asking if Dr. Anderson was a freak in the newspaper. I called the number, and it was the Ann Arbor police officer West, and that's where I told my statement to. I didn't know it was going to turn into this. They were just asking if this guy was messed up, and he messed me up, and so I admitted to it and told him, and I also gave him some names of people close to the program that would know exactly if it was true or false. Now, what they decided and chose to say is up to them. But nobody is coming out and telling the truth, because I'm not going to come here and sit in front of all you people and tell you that I was abused. I was raped, as far as I was concerned, my freshman year. I was anally penetrated several times. I would say at least 4 or 5 before I grabbed his wrist and pulled it out of my rectum. And, I was shocked. When I was walking home from the medical center, I just didn't know what to think. I mean, I thought I was raped. I mean, I didn't know what to experience. You got to understand, we're 17 and 18-year-old kids. We've had some sex, but not the kind of sex that is. So, and so that's why I'm here, because I think other people should be here, because I can't be the only one.
Let me just add, the WilmerHale report, I'm sure you're all well aware, is not an independent report. It's a report that's been hired by the University of Michigan to do this report and reveal their findings. Yes, there are some things in that report that show that the University of Michigan knew, at least back in 1979 through East Hope, but there's also comments from the few players that indicated that they told Bo early on. But I only think there were about 300 patients that were interviewed. There were over 850 survivors in this case, and I believe only a handful are part of that report. That's not independent. I remember, I think it was a year ago, Steve, that we had our press conference and we asked the university, when the report came out, waive privilege and release that report. I'm going to make that request right now. Waive privilege. If you're not hiding anything, release everything in that report. I'm going to only take a few more questions, starting with Ross, because we got another place to go.
Ross Jones with Channel 7. Mr. Schembechler, you had mentioned that at one point you had told your brother Chip about this.
I'm sorry, could you speak up a little bit?
You had mentioned you had told your brother Chip about the abuse that you had suffered. I'm just curious, approximately when was that, and what prompted that conversation?
Well, Chip passed away in 2003, and he was the best big brother you could ever ask to have. I mean, he toughened me up, right? But he loved me, and he was very defensive for me, protective. He was very angry, but he was more hurt than anything, and disappointed. Perhaps it's too mild of a term for his little brother, right? At the time, or up until recently, I was his baby brother. But we maintained a wonderful relationship, as close as any siblings I'm aware of, before he passed. He wanted to go, I think to use the term, he was going to throw down I won't say on who, and I told him that's not the way to handle this, and it's hurtful, and I'm confused, and so is Mom. Mom is going to handle this. She's the diplomat in the family.
Do you remember what prompted you to tell him? Was this closer to 1969? Was it many years later?
Well, it became quite an issue in our home, and Chip was still there. We were 3.5 years apart. So he's in, what, I don't know, 7th grade or so. So he was, we were under the same roof for quite a bit of time. And we played sports together, organized sports. We wrestled together for several years. I think that changed Chip. It soured him. It disappointed him. It made him sad. It made him angry.
Okay, 2 more questions. First, are you on the wall?
Chico Beard, 97.1. Matt, to go back to one of your previous answers, doesn't it contradict things that Gilvanni and Daniel said? You said that Jim Harbaugh didn't know anything because they said it was common knowledge throughout the locker room, and you said that you didn't believe that Harbaugh knew anything.
Right. Remember, I go back to 69. Right. As a player, I highly doubt, which was many years later, that Jim knew, and I can't read Jim's mind, but he's just the kind of guy that wouldn't pay attention to kind of this even after it started happening, after he got to the U. Remember, his dad, he wasn't a coach on the original staff starting in 69, right? So he couldn't have known.
Not, you're saying not know about you or just not know about this in general?
In general.
Yeah, I think it's suffice to say, and I'm not going to put words in Matt's mouth, but no one knows what Coach Harbaugh knows besides Coach Harbaugh. And let's leave it at that. I don't want to take away from this conference. Right here in the back row.
Well, my question next, Jeff Rager, 97.1 The Ticket. Just one more about Jim. Since you both think he did know, what did you take away from his comments on Thursday? And I mean, was that part of the reason you guys decided to maybe come forward?
For me, the reason I've stated before in terms of wanting to get out about helping others and protecting others and letting them know that it's okay to come out. And to be honest with you, yeah, the comments did provoke me to come out because, like I said during my questioning earlier, he don't know what I went through. He don't know what me and Bo said. Like I said, he could say what he went through or what he did, but I know for myself that I told Bo and the relationship that we'd had afterwards. So, I'm not saying that he did know, but I am saying that there's no way that all this go on and you're not even be privy to the information. Sometimes things are just overlooked.
Why are you guys trying to pull Jim Harbaugh into this? He wasn't there in 69. He doesn't know about this stuff. And remember, his job now is geometrically more complex than Bo's was, right? With all the commitments and
Well, he came out with a statement a week ago saying that
right.
he didn't believe that anything happened. So that's why the questions are being asked.
So let me just, if you want to talk about Coach Harbaugh, feel free to talk to Coach Harbaugh. I think everybody gave their statement today. We are concentrating on what Bo knew, what Bo was told, what the university knew. I'm going to take one last question, and I'm going to pick the one person in the corner who hasn't asked a question.
Thank you. Rachel Louise Jess with St. Clair Broadcast Group. More likely than not, this kind of abuse that you're describing is still happening today around the country. Do you think that the safeguards are in place for people who are being abused like this to be able to go and say that this is happening? And what would you say to them if they were to hear you today?
To be honest with you, that's the reason why I came forward, is because I don't think the safeguards are in place. We still have people, kids, women being abused and scared to come forward. So until we as a community, as a country, until we get behind those victims and let those victims know that we're with them, this culture is going to continue. If people are not punished, yeah, you get a few people that's punished, but overall, we all know that these people are not being punished. These predators are not being punished like they should be. So until that happens, this is going to continue to happen.
All right, so in conclusion, I think it's fair to say that medals and Big Ten championships are worth more than players, students, and sons. That's our culture. Let's change it. We need transparency, release the WilmerHale report, waive privilege. We need accountability, apologize, not for Anderson's conduct, but the university for your own conduct, and we need justice. Those three things will help all the survivors heal. Thank you very much. They will be available for some one-on-one interviews if you want to wait afterwards. Thank you.